Guys, this is it. It's the end of the road. It's been almost a whole year. But we finally made it. Chapter 36. The final chapter of empathy. Excelsior. Rest in peace, Stanley. Anyway, a quick recap. In the last chapter, the final battle was finally won, but at a cost. Baymax discovered that the Gorg all this time had been trying to save its children. And so, he gave his life to save the Gorg as the ship exploded. And this will be the end of it all. It's been a great journey, and for those who followed me so far, thank you so much. If anyone who's watched my previous videos, and if anyone is watching this in the comments section, please watch my other videos and leave comments on them. I hope you do enjoy them. My next story will hopefully feature less going outside and stuff, so I mean a few less adventurous recordings. But without further ado, let's end this. Let's read the end. Standing below the portal hanging in the sky, Gogo, Honey, Wasabi, and Fred watched as the bright light at the tip of the ship suddenly gutted out. "Oh my God!" Fred whispered in wonder. Guys, I think they..." Fred was interrupted by the sound of a muffled boom. Looking up, the group watched as a small fireball burst from the side of the ship. Moments later, a dozen more explosions ripped through the ship, causing ugly black clouds of smoke to begin billowing up towards the sky. "Oh no," Honey whispered as she covered her mouth in shock as Fred's face went pale. "Guys, Gogo began, looking at the others with stricken expressions. "You don't think..." "I don't know," Wasabi replied as he reached down and took her hand into his. "God, I don't know." As they watched, the distant sound of sirens greeted the group's ears, accompanied by the sounds of helicopters approaching overhead. "Better late than never," Gogo muttered. "Guys, look!" Fred stated as he pointed at the smoking spaceship. As the group watched, dozens of small objects began shooting out of the ship before plummeting towards the ground, tendrils of smoke trailing in their wake. "What are those things?" Honey questioned. "I think they're escape pods," Fred surmised. "Do you think the others could be on one?" Gogo inquired. "There's only one way to find out," Wasabi replied as he began tracking the trajectory of one of the pods. "Careful, these things are coming in hot." A moment after Wasabi spoke, one of the escape pods slammed into the ground a dozen yards in front of them, kicking up a cloud of dirt on impact. Reacting quickly, the group rushed over to the pod, arriving just as a hatch opened with a hiss. Eagerly, the group looked inside, only to be greeted by the sight of a booth, who immediately turned yellow and screamed. "Nose!" the booth wailed. "Do not be the one hurting me!" "Oh, Jesus!" Gogo sighed as she reached in and grabbed the booth before hauling him out of the pod. "No one's going to hurt you. Now get somewhere safe." As soon as Gogo had put the booth down, he went scrambling away as more pods began crashing to the ground both in the immediate area and some distance away. "Man, they could be in any of these," Fred groaned. "Well, looks like we've got our work cut out for us then," Gogo replied before the group split up and began investigating the other pods, continuing to only find frightened Boob inside. "Guys!" Fred called out, catching everyone's attentions. There's something coming out of the ship! Turning their attention back towards the burning spaceship, the group could see something being jettisoned out the side, followed by a large fireball. As they watched the object, it became clear it was not one of the pods as it controlled its movements through the air, instead of plummeting towards the ground. As the object drew closer to the ground, it became abundantly clear what the object was. My van! Wasabi called happily. They made it out! Honey added as she clapped her hands giddily. The group quickly gathered around the van as it settled onto the ground, allowing the passengers to disembark. Sorry, I just need a quick drink of good old cloudy lemonade. Hiro was the first to slide open the side door and hop out, where he was immediately pulled into a hug by Honey. I'm so happy you're alright! Honey exclaimed before pulling back and kissing Hiro on the forehead, tears welling up in her eyes. I can't believe you all... Honey trailed off as she watched Abigail disembark from the van, still holding Riley in her arms. Dried blood smeared beneath the girl's nose. Not the best time, but has anyone been keeping track of how many times the sentence starter, whichever character trailed off has been said in this story? That'd be an interesting, guessing game. Oh my god! Gogo exclaimed as she rushed over to Abigail's side, looking at Riley with a stricken expression. What happened? She pushed her powers too far against the Gorg, Hiro explained, as the others gathered around them. At least, that's what Baymax thought. Where is Baymax? Fred questioned as he glanced around. Hiro's face fell at that, and Tip placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. He stayed behind so we could get away, Tip explained. That doesn't mean he's dead, Hiro argued as she shook off Tip's hand. There are escape pods. He could still get out. Well, about that. The group shared an uneasy look amongst themselves, but nobody spoke up to argue. Look, the important thing is that we get Riley some help, Gogo spoke up. We heard sirens earlier, so I'm sure every emergency responder you could think of is here by now. So that means the police, the fire engines, and ambulances. More importantly, ambulances. Crud, I forgot about Bill. He's still been knocked out. Will the paramedics get to him? I'm sure they can help him, and they can help Riley too. I'll take her, Abigail offered, drawing everyone's attention to her. I'm Abigail, by the way. I think I owe you all my life. It's good to meet you, Abigail, Fred replied with a smile. I think we were all just trying to do the right thing. Be that as it may, I'm still in your debt, Abigail replied. I don't know if you guys were planning on making the superhero thing permanent, but that would be a lot harder if you guys out yourselves on day one. Besides, I've been stuck as a prisoner on an alien ship for God knows how long, so I think I might need to see a doctor too. Alright, Hiro relented with a nod, giving Riley a worried look as he did. Just take good care of her. Will do, Abigail stated with a nod before she began carrying Riley away from the others. Picking her way through the debris that now covered most of the Crytek campus, Abigail made her way to the parking lot, where most of the first responders had converged. She could see that people who had been injured in the attack were being helped by EMTs while the police set up a cordon-off area. Approaching the cordon, Abigail caught the attention of a heavy-set police officer. I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm a bit rough. That's because I am rough. But it's not stopping me from finishing this off with a bang. Given that the last chapter was already finished with a bang, that That would be a bit redundant, but so. Ma'am? The officer called out to her, catching Abigail's attention. Ma'am, are you all right? No, please. This girl needs help, Abigail said as she rushed over to the officer and showed Riley to him. Jeez, she looks pretty banged up, the officer said before he narrowed his eyes at Riley. Wait, I think I know this kid. You do? Abigail questioned in surprise. Yeah, the officer replied with a nod. Say, what was she doing here? I believe I can answer that, officer. A new voice spoke up, prompting the officer and Abigail to turn and find Alistair Cray stumbling towards them, doing his best to support the limp form of Bill Anderson as he came. Hey, can I get a doctor over here? The officer called, prompting a pair of EMTs to rush over and take Bill from Cray. That man is an employee of mine, Cray explained before indicating towards Riley, and that's his daughter who was visiting with him today. Please see that they get the best care available. I'm pretty sure that Cray's voice, what I'm doing now, is nothing like the voice that I used for him all the way back in Chapter 12. Oh well. As another EMT took Riley from her hands, Cray turned his attention towards Abigail. Thank you for your help, Miss... Cray began before his eyes went wide as he recognized her. Abigail? Hey, Cray, Abigail greeted with a chuckle. Long time no see. I can't believe it, Cray stated with wonder as his face broke out into a grin. I can't believe it! They did it! They brought you back! Stepping forward, Cray pulled Abigail into a hug, which she accepted with a laugh. I should have known you guys wouldn't give up on me, Abigail stated as she pulled back. Dad must have been so worried. Oh! That hit my freaking heart, that... The words seemed to strike Cray like a blow, immediately wiping the smile off his face. Abigail, Cray began, a concerned look on his face. There's something I feel I should tell you. What is it, Cray? Abigail questioned, her brow knitting together in concern. What's wrong? Cray? The officer asked as something seemed to occur to him. Wait, Alistair Cray, the billionaire that got kidnapped last night. Yes, Cray answered with an annoyed sigh. And if you just give me a minute, I can explain... Abigail? A new voice spoke up, a quaver in its tone. Spinning around, Abigail found her father standing a few feet away, looking at her with an expression of shocked amazement. Dad! Abigail exclaimed before rushing over and throwing herself into Callaghan's arm, the man quickly reciprocating the hug. I can't believe it, Callaghan whispered as he held his daughter close. I can't believe you're all right. Thanks to you, I'm sure, Abigail stated. I'm guessing those kids are all your students? The question seemed to snap Callaghan out of his happy daze, as a look of sorrow slowly began to creep into his features. Abigail, he began to say, his voice barely above a whisper. Honey, there's something I have to tell you. Officer, Cray spoke up, catching both Abigail and Callaghan's attention as he pointed towards the older man. You were asking about my kidnapping the other night. Well, there's the perpetrator right there. What? Abigail exclaimed as she spun to face Cray. What are you talking about? Not only did he kidnap me, he's directly responsible for everything that happened here today. Cray continued as the officer looked up at him in surprise. Cray, are you insane? Abigail snapped angrily, but stopped as Callaghan laid a hand on her shoulder. Slowly she turned to look at her father, and found him staring at her with a guilty, heartbroken expression. Sir, the officer spoke up, watching Callaghan wearily as his hand rested on the butt of his gun. Is what he's saying true? Callaghan looked at Abigail for a long moment, watching as her expression changed to one of confusion, before he turned his attention towards the officer. "Yes, it is," Callaghan confirmed, wincing slightly as he heard Abigail let out a shocked gasp. "My name is Professor Robert Callaghan, and I'm responsible for kidnapping Alistair Cray and for all the destruction that's happened here today." "Dad, what are you saying?" Abigail questioned, grabbing Callaghan's arm as she looked up at him, tears forming in her eyes. "I needed to get you back, Abigail," Callaghan explained, turning towards his daughter and grabbing both of her arms. "I was so desperate. I crossed so many lines." "Robert Callaghan?" the officer asked in surprise. "Weren't you killed in that fire a few months ago?" Oh, good God, this chapter's gonna make me cry again! "I started that fire to fake my death," Callaghan answered, and Abigail flinched away from him as if she'd been struck, pulling herself from his grasp. "I was shocked so much that I stuttered." Callaghan looked at her sadly for a moment, before he turned towards the officer again. "I started that fire to hide my theft of the microbots invented by Hiro Hamada," Callaghan elaborated. "I am responsible for the fire that destroyed the building and killed Tadashi Hamada." Abigail's choked sob brought Callaghan's attention back to her, and he knew in that moment what he saw would haunt him for the rest of his days. Tears were now streaming freely down her face. She looked at him like she didn't recognize him. She looked at him as though someone had taken her father and replaced him with something else. With a monster. "Is this a confession?" the officer questioned. I suppose it is," Callaghan admitted as he managed to tear his gaze away from his daughter. "I'm required to tell you that you have the right to keep quiet," the officer said, reaching for his handcuffs as he edged towards Callaghan. "That you have the right to have a lawyer with you when you do this." "I understand my rights," Callaghan replied. "They won't be necessary." "Are you going to come quietly?" the officer questioned as he pulled out his handcuffs. "I'm not going to fight you, officer," Callaghan answered as he held out his hands to the officer, placing his wrists next to one another. Still moving cautiously, the officer placed the cuffs on Callaghan's wrists and clicked them into place. As he did, Callaghan looked back at Abigail, who was fully crying, her hands covering her mouth. "I'm so sorry, Abigail," Callaghan muttered as tears welled up in his eyes as well. "I love you, and I'm so sorry." Abigail said nothing as she fell to her knees and wept. "Come on, pal," the officer said as he began leading Callaghan away. "I'm sure there are a lot of people downtown who are going to want to talk to you." Callaghan said nothing as they walked, sparing one last glance towards Abigail as Cray moved to her side to comfort her. As they walked, the officer looked Callaghan up and down, and a thought occurred to him. "You said you stole some microbots, right?" the officer questioned as they reached a squad car. "Yes," Callaghan confirmed as he turned his attention towards the officer. "Was a kabuki mask part of this getup at one point?" the officer inquired as he opened the door to the squad car's rear seat. "Yes," Callaghan replied, blinking in surprise. "How did you know?" "No reason," the officer replied with a shrug as he guided Callaghan into the squad car. "But it looks like I owe a couple of kids an apology." "Oh, right, all the way back in the... What chapter was it? Chapter 19 it was, I believe. Yeah, Hiro and Riley, they were telling the truth. It's the final chapter, and it's hitting me with so many feels, I don't think I'm going to get through this structurally stable, like what happened at the end of chapter 13, and what happened halfway through chapter 14, the chapter afterwards. Meanwhile, as escape pods continued to rain down from the burning spaceship, the group spent their time pulling Boov out of the pods and getting them to safety. As Hiro pulled yet another alien out of one of the pods, he let out a frustrated sigh while looking around the courtyard the group was in. "This is ridiculous!" Hiro snapped as he looked around in frustration. "He has to be here somewhere!" "Hiro," Honey said gently as she walked over to him and lay a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I think we're going to have to accept—" "No!" Hiro snapped as he turned to face Honey, pulling himself from her grasp in the process. "I'm not giving up on him! He'll find a way off, you'll see!" Honey looked at Hiro with a stricken expression and began to say something when Fred let out a cry of surprise. "Guys, look!" Fred called as he pointed skyward. Turning their attention upwards, the group could see that the Gorg ship, now almost completely engulfed in flames, had begun to retreat back through the portal. "Where's it going?" Gogo questioned. "Looks like back out into space," Wasabi replied. "But I don't know—" Wasabi was cut off as the ship suddenly exploded, the force of the blast through the portal nearly knocking them all to the ground. As they recovered their balance, the group watched. A large fireball came rushing down towards them, but was stopped as the portal suddenly collapsed, shrinking in on itself before the fireball could pass through, disappearing with a whoosh of rushing air. After that, the Kraytech campus became oddly quiet as what little debris made it through the portal fell to the ground. Oh my goodness, so... the final battle between Baymax and the Gorg and the end of the last chapter took place simultaneously at the beginning of this one. Oh my goodness. "Baymax," Hiro muttered as he stared at the spot where the portal had been moments before his eyes dropped to the ground. "Hiro," Wasabi said, moving to reach out to the boy but pausing halfway through. "I'm so sorry." Guys!" Fred called, his gaze still focused on the sky. "Heads up!" Quickly looking skywards again, the rest of the group caught sight of a piece of debris flipping through the air towards them. Scattering, the group was able to jump clear of the object as the object slammed into the ground, kicking up a cloud of dirt on impact. As the group picked themselves up off the ground and took the time to regard the object, they were shocked by what they saw. "Is that—" Tip began to say as the cloud of dirt cleared. "Abigail's test pod!" Hiro exclaimed. "Baymax must have used it to get off the ship." Rushing towards the pod, a smile spread across Hiro's face as it began to open. "I'm here, Baymax!" Hiro called as he reached the pod and looked inside. Hiro cut himself off when he did not find Baymax sitting inside, but a small starfish-like creature staring up at him. As Hiro looked at the creature in shock, the others gathered around him, staring at the occupant of the pod with wide eyes. "What the hell is that?" Gogo asked no one in particular. It is the Gorg," O answered, his tone a mixture of shock and awe. "That's the Gorg?" Tip questioned in astonishment, pulling her gaze away from the alien to give O an incredulous look. "But we've seen the Gorg," Wasabi added. "He's big and terrifying and, well, not orange." "No, I think I get it," Fred spoke up. "The whole big scary thing? That's a suit he wears. It's just like this movie I saw when I was a kid about the shadowy government agency that monitored alien life on Earth." To Hero, however, his friend's chatter was so much background noise as he glared at the Gorg and clenched the side of the pod as hard as he could. Then, with a shout of anger, Hero reached out and grabbed the Gorg, wrapping his hand around the alien and pulling it up so that they were staring face to face. "This is all your fault!" Hero snarled. "Everyone who got hurt, everyone who died because of this is your doing! Riley! Baymax! My brother!" As Hero shouted, he began to squeeze the Gorg, which let out a wail of pain as it struggled against the boy's grip. "What's the matter?" Hero spat. "Can't swallow a taste of your own medicine? How about I do to you what you did to Baymax?" As Hero spoke, his friends looked at him in shock, caught off guard by Hero's sudden anger. Before any of them could interject, though, Hero loosened his grip on the Gorg and tossed the alien back into the pod's seat. "But it wouldn't bring him back," Hero said, still glaring at the Gorg as the alien pushed itself into a seated position, taking deep, painful gasps of air. "All it would do is make me like you." The others watched the exchange with sad, sympathetic looks, and Tip rested her hand on Hero's shoulder as the boy hunkered down and squeezed his eyes closed in frustration. "All this," Hero growled. "What was it even for?" "For this." Honey spoke up as she reached down and pulled the Gorg's oval-shaped stone out of the pod. Seeing her take it, the Gorg gibbered something in an alien language as it moved to stop her, but was halted as Gogo reached down and shoved it onto its back. "Pardon me." "Oh no, you don't," Gogo said as she glared at the Gorg. "I think we should smash that thing just to teach this alien asshole a lesson." "I don't think we want to do that," Honey replied as she touched the top of the stone and it opened up, revealing the dozens of infant creatures within. As Honey looked at the contents of the egg in amazement, the others gathered around her, their eyes going wide at the sight. "Are those—" Wasabi began to say before trailing off. "Little Gorgs?" Fred finished while nodding. "Yeah, I think so." This is an egg," Honey surmised in wonder. "That's why he did all this," Tip stated. "He was trying to get his egg back." "That's why he's in the pod," Hero added as he stood back up, eyes wide with understanding. "What do you mean?" Gogo questioned in confusion. "Baymax must have found out about the Gorg's egg, too," Hero explained, looking around at his friends as he spoke. "He couldn't just let a bunch of innocent creatures die, so he took the Gorg and its egg to Abigail's pod. It had no propulsion system, so he must have thrown it out himself." "You have no idea how correct you are, Hero." "He sacrificed himself to save them," Wasabi surmised. "It's what he was programmed to do," Hero agreed with a nod. "It's what Tadashi designed him for." "But now that last bit of Tadashi is gone forever," Honey said sadly as she closed the egg back up. As they spoke, the Gorg had started shouting at them in its alien language. As Honey closed the egg, Hero relented to look down at the Gorg, only for his eyes to go wide in utter shock. "Maybe not!" Hero exclaimed as he quickly reached into the pod. "Hero?" Tip asked in confusion as she tried to see what he was doing. "What is it?" "Look what the Gorg just gave me!" Hero said excitedly as he held up Baymax's green data chip for everyone to see. "It makes sense!" That's the favor that Baymax was asking the Gorg back. Clever boy! Baymax's data chip! Gogo exclaimed as she snatched it out of Hero's hand and brought it closer so that she and the others could examine it. But how? Wasabi questioned. Baymax would have needed us to throw the pod out of the ship, and you said he broke the combat when you made him. The data chip Riley made for him, Hero replied, snapping his fingers in understanding. It must have given him enough memory and processing power to do what he needed to do without sacrificing his core data chip. I'm confused. How does this fix things? Tip asked. Don't you remember? Hero questioned as he took back the data card and held it up for Tip to see. Everything that makes Baymax Baymax isn't here. All his programming, all his memories. So all we are needing to be doing is to rebuild his mechanical body, O surmised, nodding his head and grinning as he followed the logic. Then the Baymax android shall be returned. As his friends began to talk excitedly about the turn in events, Hero looked down at the green data card. I've got to say, Tadashi, Hero muttered as he rubbed his finger over the cartoon doctor's face imprinted on the data chip. You sure built a hell of a robot. Tadashi lives in Baymax, and Baymax lives in everyone. This is gonna be a, I want to say happy ending, but with Callaghan and this is gonna be a semi-happy ending, I guess. Later. Ugh. Anger groaned from somewhere in the black abyss of unconsciousness. My head. Remind me to never do that again. Joyce hissed in pain. Yeah, Joe, I'm going to call you Joyce for one last time. It's the final chapter, after all. Gladly, Disgust agreed. Why are all the lights off? Oh no! Fear wailed. Are we dead? No, we're just unconscious, Sandus replied. I think we're coming around, too. I think I'm getting some emotional readings from our empathy thingy, Disgust spoke up. It seems like there are a bunch of people, wherever we are. Quiet. Joyce shushed them. I think Riley is waking up. Slowly, as her emotions' voices quieted down, Riley felt herself come drifting out of the void and back into herself. She became aware of the soft mattress she was laying upon, along with the blanket that was spread over most of her body. As she began to stir, she noticed that her head felt as though it was made of lead, and she briefly considered falling back into the grip of unconsciousness. She pushed on, however, and as her eyes began to flutter open, she needed to squeeze them shut for a moment to give them time to adjust against the light. After she finally found the strength to open her eyes, Riley discovered that she was in a hospital room. The bed she was on lay in the middle of the room. Or should I say, the bed she lay on was in the middle of the room, with a door to the right and a large window looking out over San Francisco to her left, the morning sunlight touching the off-white walls. Nestled in the upper left corner of the room was a small television, from which a newscaster droned. Glancing around the room, Riley noticed that it was filled with her friends. Tip was sitting in one of the chairs to her right, while Hero was standing directly to her left, looking out over the city through the window with a tablet tucked under his arm. In front of her, Wasabi, Honey, Gogo, Fred, and to her delirious shock, O, were all sitting and standing around the room while conversing with one another. Riley! Tip exclaimed happily as she noticed her friend stirring. Guys, Riley's awake! The words prompted Riley's friends to turn their attention towards her, each of them sporting happy, relieved smiles. Hey guys, Riley greeted with a smile of her own as she looked around at them. Riley's cheerful greeting prompted her friends to move in closer, each of them greeting her in turn. "Hey, Fargo," Gogo said as she gave Riley a hug. "Happy to see you up." "How are you feeling?" Honey inquired. "We were so worried about you." "You should have seen Yuri's face when she first caught sight of you," Wasabi said with a laugh. "I thought she was going to die from worry." Wasabi's laughter stopped as Gogo pulled away from Riley before she turned and Falcon punched him in the arm, causing him to let out a whine of pain. It wasn't really a Falcon punch, it was a normal punch. This is an F-Zero after all. "So, we won?" Riley questioned with a grin. "Victory was claimed most triumphantly," O exclaimed. "Oh, you should have seen it, Fargo!" Fred added excitedly. "Our heroes victorious! Alien ship destroyed! Bad guy arrested!" "So, typical Saturday morning cartoon stuff," Tip surmised as she gave Riley a hug. Except it wasn't a Saturday morning cartoon. It was, your universe's equivalent to real life, and you almost died saving the world, But don't worry about it, because you have officially just joined the ranks of, or at least become on par with the ranks of the Avengers. You haven't completely become part of their team yet, because I haven't sent invitation letters for you yet, but I'm sure you'll get there one day. I'm gonna shut up for now and keep reading. "The important thing is that everyone got out all right. Honey spoke up as she gave Riley a warm smile. "Yeah, I don't know what I would do if..." Riley trailed off as she looked around the room. A confused expression formed on her face. "Wait, where's Baymax?" Riley felt a pang of fear shoot through her chest as she watched her friends exchange glances. Though it was muted by the fact that while her friends were clearly expecting the question, they didn't seem troubled by it. "After you passed out, we had to get off the ship," Hero explained as he sat down on the bed. "But the Gorg was still coming for us, so Baymax elected to stay behind to keep him busy." "Baymax stayed behind?" Riley questioned, before giving Honey an accusatory look. "I thought you said everyone got all right." "They did," Honey insisted, keeping her voice low in an effort to keep Riley calm. "How is getting blown up in an alien spaceship getting out all right?" Riley demanded. "Because he didn't die, Riley," Hero spoke up, placing his hand on top of her to draw her attention towards him. "Look. His personality chip is going to be in the tablet, and he's going to speak through the tablet like he spoke through a screen in the first episode of Big Hero 6 the series." As Riley turned towards Hero, the boy held the tablet he had been carrying up to face her. As she looked at it, she realized the tablet's screen was depicting a close-up of Baymax's minimalist features, the eyes blinking as they looked at Riley. "Good morning, Riley," Baymax greeted, his voice distorted by the tablet speaker. "How are you feeling today?" "Baymax!" Riley exclaimed with joy as she took the tablet from Hero's hands and held it in front of her. "You're alive!" "I am not alive," Baymax corrected. "I am a robot." "A robot is alive! You're alive! Everything is okay now!" "But how?" Riley questioned as her brows furrowed. "If you stayed behind, how—" Thinking about what Baymax had just said about his nature, Riley began to run her hand along the edges of the tablet. After a moment of searching, Riley found an occupied connection port. Turning the tablet so that she could see the port, Riley grinned as she saw Baymax's green data chip sticking out of it. "Your data chip!" Riley announced as she turned her attention back to the tablet screen. "But how did you get it off the ship?" "Thanks to you, actually," Hero spoke up with a smirk. "Me?" Riley questioned in confusion. "Thanks to the processing power afforded Thanks to the processing power afforded to me by the extra data chip you gave me, I was able to remove this data chip and continue functioning," Baymax explained. "I apologize for its loss." "That's fine," Riley replied with a chuckle, before her expression turned perplexed again. That still doesn't explain really how you got off the ship. Pardon me. Pardon me again. He used Abigail's pod, Tip explained. He put the chip in there with the Gorg. The Gorg? Riley questioned in surprise. Baymax saved the Gorg. Does that really sound out of character for him? Wasabi asked with a chuckle. I was programmed to preserve life, Baymax elaborated. Human or otherwise. Also, it turns out the big scary monster look is actually a fancy suit of armor, Fred stated. In reality, the Gorg's a starfish thing about the size of your hand. You're kidding, Riley stated as she looked at Fred in shock. If I'm lying, I'm dying, Fargo, Fred replied with a chuckle as he shrugged helplessly. Baymax's actions were also a little more understandable when we all found out why the Gorg wanted that rock so bad, Honey added. Why? Riley questioned. It is being the Gorg's egg. Spoke up, causing Riley to whip her head around to stare at the booth in shock. His egg? Riley repeated, before her face scrunched up in confusion. Her egg? She turned to Hero for help, but all the boy could do was offer her a helpless shrug. Since it's an alien starfish, I guess it works similar to seahorses in that it's supposed to be a thing that male seahorses actually have babies. So, either male or female starfishes can have babies. And, how about I just get this chapter over with so we can finish the story? I'll have a look at I'll brush up on my seahorse facts after this. The Gorg is being the last of its kind, elaborated. If it had been losing its egg, the Gorg would become inevitably extinct. I guess that does explain a lot. Riley mused as she thought over everything that had happened. That doesn't make what it did all right. No, it doesn't, Wasabi agreed with a nod. But I don't think the Gorg will be getting away with it. We got out of there after grabbing Baymax's data chip, Gogo elaborated. But we left the Gorg and its egg behind. I'm guessing the feds took care of that. With any luck, the Gorg is locked up in some cage beneath Area 51 where it belongs. What about Callaghan? Riley questioned as she turned her attention towards Hero. He turned himself in to the police. Hero answered, a melancholy look on his face. He confessed to everything, including Tadashi's death. Does Abigail know? Riley inquired. Apparently she was there when he turned himself in, Fred explained. She's in another room recovering from everything. She seemed pretty shaken up. That's hardly unexpected, Honey commented with a tone of sympathy. Imagine if one of your parents was a serial killer. That would be a massive shock. So, that's it then? Riley asked. It's all over? I'm afraid so, Riley. I'm gonna miss this story. I really am. It was so much fun. It looks like it, Wasabi confirmed with a nod. All that's really left is Tip began to say. Riley! A voice exclaimed from behind her friends, interrupting Tip. As her friends stepped to the side, Riley could see her parents standing in the doorway looking at her in surprise, with Cass and Lucy standing behind them. Riley's parents quickly rushed over to her, Bill pulling her into a hug as her mother covered the top of her head in kisses. Oh, Riley! Jill whispered excitedly as tears began to well up in her eyes. Oh, baby, you're awake! How are you feeling, Monkey? Bill questioned, smiling as he pulled back and laid a hand on Riley's own. Like someone filled my head with cement, Riley groaned. I can't say I'm surprised, Bill replied with a chuckle and a shake of his head. It was only then that Riley noticed that her father's head was currently wrapped with bandages. I'm glad that Bill's all right. Are you okay? Riley questioned as she looked up at him in concern. I've had worse, Bill replied with a shrug as he gingerly touched the bandages. It was worth it to keep you safe. I still can't believe that you were there, Riley, her mother whispered, looking at Riley with tears in her eyes. That you were involved with aliens and supervillains. That I have superpowers? Riley finished with a small smile. You've got to admit, Monkey, it's a little hard to believe, Bill stated. No joke. You should try living it, Riley replied with a chuckle as she lowered her gaze. Feeling every emotion that goes through someone else's head. Every moment of joy, every bit of sadness. Being able to look at someone and knowing exactly what they're feeling right at that moment. Riley paused and raised her gaze, doing her best to look both of her parents in the eye. Like knowing that your parents are worried and upset by what their daughter chose to do, all covering a deeper fear that there might be something irrevocably wrong with her. Riley paused as her breath hitched. But also saying that beneath all of that, they're proud of her. Bill's eyes widened in amazement as Jill covered her mouth in shock. Surprise! Riley said with a small chuckle, her tone making it clear her attempt at humor was merely a cover for her growing anxiety. Sweetheart, Jill started to say, lowering her hand and laying it on Riley's while looking at her daughter in wonder. That's amazing, Bill finished as he took Riley's other hand. Really? Riley questioned as tears began welling up in her eyes. You guys don't think I'm crazy or a freak? Are you kidding? Bill asked with a chuckle. It's like you said, we're proud of you. How could we be anything but? Jill added before they both pulled Riley into a hug, holding their daughter tightly as relieved and happy tears rolled down their cheeks. After a moment, the family pulled apart, and Bill gave his wife a grin. Our daughter, the superhero, Bill stated in amazement. Can you believe it? After what I saw, I'd rather not, Jill answered soberly. Mom, I had to do it, Riley tried to argue. Whether you had to do it or not is an argument for a different time, Jill relented. What matters is that you can put all this superhero stuff behind you. Excuse me? Superheroes in New York? Give me a break. Let me try this. Excelsior. Enough said. I'll do it.